the similarities. I remember that Jephthah had a lot of siblings, and his mom was a prostitute, and they counted him out. I remember that.
Okay, that's good. They definitely counted him out, and that's really good. And he was like an outside child, right? And so you remembered a lot with that. And so him and Gideon, the similarity that him and Gideon had was simply that they were both called by God, right? And do anybody remember, were both of them have their concerns about whether or not be God would be able to bring them to victory?
Yeah.
Y'all remember? Okay, somebody said yes. All right. And so how did they handle those concerns?
I think Gideon, I remember him asking God to, just show him a couple of signs, just to make sure that it was on, everything was on the up and up. And Jephthah, I remember him kind of like showing himself, because like I said, I remember last week when he asked them about the ruler, like basically be mindful who you choose to lead you. And then he kind of went away. So I kind of feel like he kind of like came forth, but then he didn't come forth. It was like he knew he had to do something, but he kind of was hesitant. So he kind of made himself known, but he wasn't trying to do too much.
Okay. So yeah, so Gideon, both of them were called, both of them had their reservations. Gideon definitely was one who he was honest with God, like, okay, I know that you're calling me to this, but can you just show me a sign? What it was that he was very honest and forthcoming with his discomfort, right? And because of that, before he went into battle, God had no problem showing him the signs, that he asked for, so that he could be reassured. And so whether it was about the fleece or whether it was right before he was about to go into the battle with the 300, and God had allowed him, before he even asked, God now knew who Gideon was, and God had went ahead and told him to go on by where the Midianites was, and he was able to hear the dream, okay, saying that Gideon was going to have victory over them. And so that's one thing that Gideon did. Now Jephthah, on the other hand, he seemed a little bit more sure of himself. Is like he had no doubt that the Lord would give him victory, but I think he just thought that there was something more that he could do. And that might be subjective. That could be how I interpret it. You might interpret it a different way. And so that's one of the reasons why I always encourage you to read it on your own. But based on my interpretation of it, it was like he knew what the Lord could do, but he might have been a little bit unsure of what he could do. So for his own reassurance, it was like, Lord, if you would just go ahead and give me this victory, I'll ensure that when I get home, the very first thing that will greet me, I will, give it over to you. I will sacrifice it to you. And unfortunately, when he got home after he did indeed get the victory, it was his child, his only child, to greet him. But what I love was that he wound up being a man of his word, and he did go ahead and he gave that sacrifice. Now, that offering that he gave, that wasn't of God, because we are not required to give human sacrifices. And then we had even reflected back to the time of Abraham, when Abraham went up to that mountain to sacrifice his son. But even then, that was a testing of his faith. But when he got up there wound up being an animal for him to actually sacrifice, because that's the type of sacrifice that God wants. He wanted to be able to show that he was willing to do, but his sacrifice was not for him to sacrifice a human or his child. And so that was just kind of one of the similarities and one of the differences between the two. And so as we move forward, you guys know that I don't usually come with titles, but today when I was trying to make it back to my room to discuss, the Bible study, something had hit me. And as I was studying Judges chapter 12, which is going to be the chapter that we come up with today, there was something that just kept sticking out to me. And it was the telltale signs, okay? The telltale signs. And I just want you to keep that in mind, because sometimes what we say is a little different than how we really are. And somehow, some way, we tend to come out with the truth, whether we intend to or not. So I just want to kind of keep that in the back of you keep that in the back of your mind while we go ahead with this. And so Judges chapter 12, verse 1, it says, then the people of Ephraim mobilized an army and crossed over the Jordan River to Zaphon. When they sent the message to Jephthah, why didn't you call us to help you fight against the Ammonites? We were going to burn your house down with you in it. Jephthah replied, I summoned you at the beginning of the dispute, but you refused to come. You failed to help us in our struggle against Ammon. So when I realized you weren't coming, I risked my life and went to battle without you. And the Lord gave me victory over the Ammonites. So why have you now come to fight me? The people of Ephraim responded, you men of Gilead are nothing more than fugitives from Ephraim and Manasseh. So Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead and attacked the men of Ephraim and defended them. Jephthah captured the shallow crossings of the Jordan River, and whenever a fugitive from Ephraim tried to go back across, the men of Gilead would challenge them. Are you a member of the tribe of Ephraim? They would ask. If the men said, no, I'm not, they would tell him to say Shibboleth. If he was from Ephraim, he would say Seboeth, because the people from Ephraim cannot pronounce the word correctly. Then they would take him and kill him at the shallow crossings of the Jordan. In all, 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years. When he died, he was buried in one of the towns of Gilead. All right. Now I just want to stop right here. Does this story, especially the very beginning, does this sound like anything we have gone over before with the people of Ephraim?
Yep.
Okay. You want to
It
remind?
sounds, if I'm not mistaken, it sounds like Gilead, when they was like, why you didn't call us to help you? And he kind of had to find a way to finesse, like, I can't remember, but I know he had to like make it seem like it wasn't the best victory, or it was some way he had to make it seem like it wasn't all that, so they could not be angry with him for helping. But we know that they only wanted to help him because they wanted the victory and they wanted the attention.
Absolutely, that's right. Judges 8, we saw something very similar. So it says, then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when you first went to fight the Midianites? And they argued heatedly with Gideon, but Gideon replied, what have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't even the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than an entire crop of my little clan of Abizer? God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeb, the commanders of the Midianite army. What have I accomplished compared to that? When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, their anger subsided. And so when we see that in Judges 8, and then we go back over to Judges 12, aren't we able to see something about Ephraim's character as a people? Okay, as a people. Because this is the same thing that they did, but see, Jephthah is different than Gideon, okay? Gideon was like, I see how they are, they just want to get credit because the battle's already won. They were nowhere to be found when the time came. But here it is, they want to have credit because the victory has already been won. And so, I'll go ahead and I'll make you feel good inside. And so they were able to stroke their ego. And then the people of Ephraim, their anger subsided. And we have people like that. We have people who are in our lives who really don't want to be there for what's hard in our life. They don't want to be there to help us out. Even if y'all remember with Gideon, the battle wasn't completely won until Gideon was able to capture those two soldiers, the two leaders. And when they were hungry, they would not be fed. And there are a lot of people who will come into your life who just want to get on with you now that the victory has been won, but they don't want to go through the trials with you. They don't want to go through the tribulation with you. It's just that now that you have the victory, now they want to jump in on it. And so here it is, it's like, well, why didn't you call me? Well, they knew what was going on. They should not have necessarily had to be called. They should have came and showed up, and they could have been there to help. But see, that's not what these type of individuals do. And so when I say these type of individuals, it's not just the people of Ephraim, but the people who are like or similar to the people of Ephraim that is in your life. Can any of you identify within your own selves people that are in your life who were just like that? You were not here for me when I was going through the toughest times in my life, but now it's here that now that we have victory, now that I am past this point in my life, now all of a sudden, you all on me. All right. This happens all the time. I see it happening even in my life. All right. I see it happening even in my life now. And I just thank God for it, because sometimes we might question ourselves and we might say, wait a minute now, is it just me, or is there something wrong with me? Am I being unfair, to them, or I might not know how to handle these people. Well, Gideon handled them one way, and that was one way to deal with it. But we see that Jephthah, he handles it a completely different way. He's not here for any of that. He says in verse 2, I summoned you at the beginning of the dispute, and you refused to come. You failed to help us in the struggle against Ammon. So when I realized that you weren't coming, and that's the same thing as saying, when I realized that I could not depend on you, because there will be people in your life that you really, truly cannot depend on. Some people that you will summon, but guess what? You never needed them in the first place. See, sometimes we think we need people, right? Sometimes we like to look around at what we have around us or who we have around us, and we believe that that helps us to build up our strength, right? And we already know Jephthah was a little nervous, he might have looked at, and that's one of the reasons why he gave, the swore that oath to God, but he never needed that. Even the oath that he swore was not needed. And actually, it wasn't even of God. It was not of God in the very first place. And that's why he wound up with the ultimate sacrifice, because it wasn't a sacrifice that God required of him. It was a sacrifice that he made out of fear. And we have to be very careful of things like that, because we make really odd moves because of fear, because we're unsure. And he was very unsure, and that's okay. It's okay, because he learned his lesson. And the thing about it is, once he learned his lesson, he just went up, he owned up to it, and he gave that sacrifice, and he stood firm with the Lord, and he was still a judge of Israel. And so it was just a character builder for him, but he paid an ultimate price for that. But now he could stand firm knowing that, see, I'm not Gideon. I'm not Gideon. I'm not here to stroke your ego. When I needed you, when I summoned you, you were not here. He's not Gideon. And sometimes you gotta not be Gideon yourself. We gotta let people know, but I summoned you. See, it wasn't really meant for them to help you win the battle anyway. but I did call on you and you were not there. You refused to come and you failed to help us. You failed to help us when you saw that we were struggling. That happens in our life to this very day. People do that very thing. And so he said, when he realized that you wasn't coming, what did he do? He risked his life and he went into battle without him. And the Lord gave him victory. And that's so powerful to me. Because sometimes before we want to make a move, and I'm probably really talking to myself right now, before we want to make a move, we sit there and we want to get other people with us. How many of you want to do something, or God called you to do something or called you to go somewhere, but before you do it, you have to sit there and you got to call on other people, try to see, if you want to come with me, you want to do this with me, don't let it be somebody who got the same type of idea, a plan, a desire that you do, because it's like we just want to, hold on, but it could be something that God is calling you to do solo dolo. And the reason why is because he want to show you that he's going to give you victory. And in the end, just like what we are seeing right here, nobody can get the victory but God. Nobody but God. And considering the people of Ephraim and their history, good and well, they would have wanted to sit there and take all the glory for that. And that's one of the beautiful things about this story, because it shows us God is the one to get the glory. See, we don't know about the people that we have around us. We might know something about them, but we don't know everything about them. We don't even know their history. And they have a pattern of this. See, he was calling on them because he thought that they could help. But because of their character, they were nowhere to be found. But also because of their character, they're going to come after the victory was won. We have those people in our lives as well. And we might not understand it, and we might not like it when they don't come around or they don't show up. And we really want to be mad at them. But we have to sit back and almost say, thank God, because why would we want somebody like that on our team anyway? The story could have been so much different. And God would not have been the one to get the glory for it. And so if God is calling you to something, and the people who you are calling to be there for you, or to be beside you, or to help you through it, or to help you get over, if they're not coming around, that could all be by design. You go anyway. You do it anyway. You step out on faith anyway. It says that he says, I risked my life and went into battle without you. There was a lot on the line. He risked his life, but he did it anyway. He stepped out on faith. And so then he's going to question them. So why have you come to fight me? And so then now Ephraim want to respond and talk about, who he is. You men of Gilead are nothing more than fugitives from Ephraim and Manasseh. So now he want the people of Ephraim, now they want to downplay who he is and his right to be there. People in our lives, they will do that to us too. And I don't know why the Lord is having us to go here tonight, but I trust him. But people in your life will do that to you too. Well, you're nothing. You're not as much as I am. You're nothing. But we see right here what's happening. It's not that he's nothing. He's obviously something the Lord saw fit to call him. The Lord saw fit to give him victory. Even despite his shortcomings and his little hint of disbelief, the Lord still saw fit. But yet and still, they want to sit here and make him feel like they're nothing more than fugitives, like you're not even really a part of us. And that's good, because he don't want to be a part. But I tell you what he did do, it says that Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead, the ones that they're trying to downplay, and they attacked the men of Ephraim and they defeated them. They defeated them. And so so when we read in verse 5, it says after Jephthah captured the shallow crossings of the Jordan River, and whenever a fugitive from Ephraim tried to go back across, the men of Gilead would challenge them and say, "Are you a member of the tribe of Ephraim?" And they would ask. If the man said, "No, I'm not," they would have them say Sheboath. If he was from Ephraim, he would say Siboath, because they did not pronounce the H. But the thing about it is, now here it is, we see that the people of Ephraim, they thought that they was something. We see in verse 1, they were talking about, we were going to burn your house down with you in it. They're like, you should have called us for victory. They thought that they was something, but they were all lip service. They were nothing else. But see, the true telltale sign of this is in their actions. Everything that the Ephraimites are, it all comes from their actions. It doesn't matter what they say. Their audio don't match their video. They say that they could help you win a victory, but they're never there for you. They say that they're going to burn your house down, and they tell you that you're nothing, but you are obviously something, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. And when they're supposed to be such a mighty people, and they want to put themselves above the men of Gilead, but yet and still, once they were defeated themselves, they wouldn't even own up to who they were. And that's why they said, "Oh, no, I'm not." But it's because of their dialect. It's because of where they from. They were not able to pronounce the H. And so that in itself was a telltale sign of who you are. And that's something we have to know about ourselves. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. Because the truth of the matter is that who you are is going to show up in one form or another. It's just a part of who you are. There are some things that we could try to do, like they could say that, "No, I'm not," but there's certain things that's embedded in us, that the truth of who we are is going to come out. And there's nothing that we could do about it. And there was nothing that they could do about it. And so as a result of that, they would take them and they would kill them at the shallow crossings of the Jordan. And in all, 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. 42,000 of them were killed. And Jephthah, the one who they said was nothing more than just a fugitive from their tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, he was able to judge Israel for 6 years. And when he died, he was buried in one of the towns of Gilead. And so I really do love that story. I love that story because it tells us, number one, I mean, and this is once again just my perspective of the story. You might have your own, and so I do encourage you to share. You know, and remember, for those of you who have been with this in this Bible study for a while, I always talk about filters and lenses, right? We tend to filter what it is that we are taking in based on our own, personal beliefs, our own personal experiences, and that tends to be the lens that we see things through. And so once again, when I'm sharing my interpretation of this scripture or the word, it could truly just be filtered through my experiences or my current experience, and that's the lens that I'm seeing it through. But if you guys have a different experience and you're seeing it differently, by all means share, because a lot of this is subjective. But what I love about it is that it definitely is consistent and it applies to my life. Even as I was sitting here talking today, just thinking about, there have been times that I know that the Lord was calling me to do something, and I really, really just wanted other people to go in on it with me. And they said no. They said no. There are people even now in the business that I do. I've asked people, can you come on with me? Can you do this with me? And it's like, oh no, I don't want to do it with you. I want to do it on my own, or I don't want to do it, however I don't want to do it. But yet and still, but later on, it's like, well, maybe I could have, or maybe I should have. No, but it's not even against the person. It could be that this is something that God wants you to do. And I could see that now, because I could look at it and I could say, I could look back and I'd be like, it's nothing but God. Nothing but God. But if we had the people that we had, or the people that we wanted, had they been on the ride with us, we could look back and say it was God, but maybe by the grace of God, thank God for the people that he had, and we would still kind of share in that, share in God's glory. And there's just some things that only God could get the glory for. And it might not be for that particular situation. It could be for you to know who he is, because when he's about to take you to the very next level, he needs you to remember who he is, because the people that were with you may not be able to go there with you the next time. Not everybody could go everywhere with you. Not everybody who want to go with you is going to be able to go with you. That's just not necessarily the way God is designing this particular thing that's in your life. Now, don't get me wrong. We all have circumstances where we work alongside people, we start things with people, we do things with people. I mean, hey, we marry people, right? And so I'm not saying that you do everything alone, but there are just certain things that God just want to use as an opportunity for him to get glory, for him to get give you the victory over it, and for you to see that it was him and only him that was able for you to do this, because you're gonna need that more than anything else when he brings you to that next level. Because see, the different things and the thing about going to the next level with God, and we talked about this very briefly during a prayer service right before, is that, when we like to say, well, I'm blessed, or I'm highly favored, or whatever it is that we like to say that sounds real good and real churchy sometimes, what we fail to realize is how hard it is to get to that place. It's not easy. More times than not, when you grow in the Lord, it's not easy. Even if we look at Jephthah, if we look at who he was at the very beginning. Now, first, it does says that he was a great warrior. So let's just put that there, right? But he was the son of Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife had several sons. So this was an outside child, right? He was not accepted. His brother said that he would get none of the inheritance that their earthly father had, nothing, because they reminded him that your mother was just a prostitute. So that's saying you're not worth it. You're not even really one of my father's kids. You're not worth what we are. That's what they tried to say. That's what the world tried to say. And so he fled from his brothers. And he had a band of worthless rebels following him. And so let's just go dig in there for a second, because, and you don't have to share it necessarily, but think within your own self. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody told you that you were less than something? You were not worthy of something? And it made you go to a place where you just separate yourself from them, and you just kind of, just go into this place where, you might not have been around rebels, but you kind of surrounded yourself among the people or the things, or been in a place that you felt was kind of worth or not worth much, because people told you that you were not worth much. But what I love about this is the first thing that it says was that he was a great warrior. So that's the first thing. We're going to lead with that. It was other people that wanted to take his circumstances and judge him by his circumstances. But that's not who God called him to be. God said what he was. God said that he was a warrior, no matter what the world did, and no matter how he tried to separate himself, and no matter who he surrounded himself around. God sent those elders to find him. because God had already ordained who he was. That's the way God is with us. God already ordained who we are, but that doesn't mean that life is not going to be, that life is going to be easy. We just have to remember that that's what we lead with, because a lot of us have had situations where people have counted us out. A lot of us have situations where, you know, people has made us feel less than. But God said that you are so much more than that, regardless of what people would say. And then even with him, his growing pains, him having to know, he knew who God was, but he just didn't have that assurance inside of him. And so that made him, you know, give the ultimate sacrifice of his only child. But it built him in character. And unfortunately, a lot of us have these experiences where we seem to lose a lot along the way, or have these experiences that are super painful. Super painful. But it's a part of the process for us to get to where it is that God would have us. And so what I love is that when we go back into chapter 12, and, you know, when we really see that character, I love that boldness of Jephthah. And not to say I love Gideon. There's a lot that I absolutely love about Gideon. I love Gideon's honesty. I love Gideon's transparency. I love that. And we see the absolute benefits of it. And then I love the boldness of Jephthah, because he was not about to let the people of Ephraim take that away from him. He was not about to sit there and stroke their ego when they were so undeserving of that. Why? Because he know that he'd been through a lot to get to where he is in God. He know that what God had to bring him through. And that's only the type of boldness that you have when you have been through something. And you can be sure of who you are in God. And so when a lot of people sit there and they try to, you know, get credit for something, or the people who really want what you have, that they really are the ones that get me every time. It's like, oh, I see what she's doing, I want to do that too. Or I see what he's doing, I want to have some of that as well. And you have no idea what it takes to get there. No idea what that person has gone through. And if you really knew what it took for that person to get there, I bet you would think twice about wanting what it is that that person has. The people of Ephraim, they wanted that victory after the victory was already won. They never wanted to go into battle and get any of it. They never wanted to fight for anything. They didn't want to go through what Gideon went through. They didn't want to go through what Jephthah went through. They just asked them, they summoned them, would you be here when I need to go to battle? They couldn't even do that. So they definitely didn't have it in them to get the victory. And not everybody who's around you have it in them to get the victory. And that's why they're not called in the first place. That's why they are not called in the first place. But understand that if God has called you to it, it is not going to be easy. But sometimes you have to really remember that you already have the victory. You have to remember that you are already a great warrior, and that leads above everything else. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter who you are. None of that stuff matters. None of that stuff matters, but you just know that when God has called you to something, he's gonna get you through it. He's gonna give you the victory. He's gonna give you the battle. And those people that are around you, maybe they're just not, they were not supposed to go on that journey with you, because this is between you and God. This is strengthening you, because trust me, you will need that strength again for the next thing that he calls you to. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to be like Ephraim. You don't have to be like Gideon. You don't have to be like Jephthah. You could be just who you are. because the time is going to have to come when you're going to have to stand up and you're going to have to show yourself approved. You're going to have to be that person. You're going to have to stand alone. And it's just going to be you and God. And how you handle is going to be the telltale sign. That's going to be the sign. And so did anybody have anything to say about that? The next couple of verses are really just talking about the other three judges. So I didn't want to break up where we were before reading about that. But did anybody have anything to say about this? No? Okay.
I just find it interesting how we are getting to a point where the tribes are kind of having issues within each other. Because before when we were reading, it was more so them against the world, them against everyone else. And now I'm starting to see where they are kind of having issue within from tribe to tribe, which took me back, and I can't remember what book it was, but they were saying how the people, one of the tribes had put the altar up, and the other tribe thought that it was like blasphemous. Like, what are you doing? Are you trying to get us killed? Are you? And it was like, no, I just want y'all to know that I'm one of y'all. Like, because we are going such a distance from each other and we're starting our own little communities, I want to just to let you know that I'm brethren, I'm a part of you. And so it's that's something that I've noticed, and I'm kind of starting to see the even though it's one, like I said, it's one tribe, you're starting to kind of see the different personalities of each tribe, which then takes me back to the sons, Joseph's sons or Jacob's sons personalities and all of that. It's just starting to kind of be weird here. But I also just thought about with you saying sometimes you got to stand alone, even down to Black people. And how like I'm currently I go to Howard University, so I'm learning about social work from a beautiful lens, and we've started learning about our history as Black people. And I just finished learning about mutual aid societies, which was started after slavery by Black people, and how we had such a strong I guess just a strong level of self-sufficiency within us, and a strong level of decency and dignity and respect. And we held each other accountable for it. And it kind of basically, long story short, it kind of puts me in this mind of like I guess our success was relying on us and God, basically, because we were definitely religious people then as well. So it's just kind of thinking, it's just this whole thing about sometimes the victory is in your hands. It kind of took me there when it comes to our people as well, as though we want someone to save us, but sometimes all we got is us and God. So it's a lot. My brain was over here thinking a lot, but those were the two main things, just how the tribes are kind of starting to kind of go at each other, and you see the differences, and how in today's time, I related this to us as a people, and how our freedom is more than likely going to be in our own hands and God's hands.
Yeah, amen. We do the scripture that you were referring, or the story that you were referring to, was in Joshua 22. And it was when the Reuben, Gad, and a half tribe of Manasseh, when they were building that altar so that they could remember God, but the rest of the tribes of Israel had came to them thinking that it was against God. And they did say that later on, as the time would pass, they just really wanted, the generations that would come after them to be able to remember who God was, right? And it's like it was almost prophetic in a sense that they feared that in the future that their descendants were not gonna know, and almost question why did they worship God in the way that they worship God. And it was pretty prophetic even from back then to where we are now, because even as I listened to you, an example that you would get given what you learned in school, and people, y'all could disagree with me and I'm okay with that. And I'm like listening to how beautiful the story sounded. But when I look around sometimes and see what we do to each other, okay, what we do to each other, it doesn't in this day and age seem so beautiful. You know, it doesn't, we don't, some of us, not everybody, you know, as a community, we don't have that thing where we stick together because we might not be suffering in the same way. And so we don't just have God to rely on. You know, even if you say within the own Christian community, when we think about, you know, how there's a lot of set tripping even within the way that we worship God, and we are losing like that togetherness. We're losing that sense of who God is and him holding us together, because we have so many other things that are happening to us, and we are becoming the lovers of ourselves, and just it goes real deep in a way that I think is a lot to go into within these last couple of minutes that we have in Bible study. But it reminds me of that. It's like it was almost prophetic when he said it in Joshua 22, like they're not gonna remember. They're not going to remember. And for a lot of us, sometimes we really don't remember. And so many generations, as we're reading now, that was Joshua 22, and we're just in Judges 12. But when we look back at how much time has passed, so yes, you do see the 12 tribes starting to break down, that they're not the same individuals who went through those 40 years together. They are definitely not the individuals who were in Egypt together. Who were delivered together. I mean, they were complaining back then, but at least they were complaining together. They're not the same people. Too much has happened. And if you think back to after they came out of that direct leadership of Moses and then Joshua, what was happening? They were trying to remind them of who God was. And we're not even really seeing that happening now the way we did in the first couple of chapters. It's like they want somebody else to believe in. They want something else to believe in. And it is causing a bigger divide. And we see that because, see, this victory that they should have had, this should have been for all of Israel. But we see with Ephraim is not even looking at it as here it is. This is a victory for all of us. Ephraim is looking at, no, we want to get glory for this victory. We want to get credit for this victory. And this victory wasn't even for them. It's not about anybody getting credit. This victory was truly, should have been truly for everybody. But they have become so divided as a people, so self-centered as a people, that they don't see that. It had nothing at all to do with who fought the battle. It should have just been for them. But they are so divided. And a lot of us are divided. Everywhere you go, I want you just to think of where there's supposed to be unities in your own family, in your own households, at your job. Think about the little cliques everywhere you go, every person that you're around. Y'all supposed to be working for a common good, but yet and still, we don't even think about it being any of that. Who is going to get the acknowledgement for that? Who's going to get the victory for that? Who's going to be most popular? Who's going to appear stronger? But yet and still, all we want to do is divide. And this should have been a victory for all of them, for every single one of them. But yes, your observation was spot on, Amber. We're just seeing the more we read and the more time passes, they're not even a tribe of Israel anymore. And so that was a very good observation. Anybody else have anything to say? Why everybody's so quiet? How was it? Did y'all understand where we were coming from? Was it making sense to you? What I was saying?
Yes.
Okay. I always want to make sure that this is not, just a me thing. I'll be getting something from it.
Was.
I want to make sure everybody else is. All right. All right. But we don't know what the Lord is trying to necessarily tell us. But one of the things that I got from this is definitely the telltale signs of people. Definitely the telltale signs of people, and just understand that, especially as you move forward and you will be tested, you will go into battle. We see that with everybody that the Lord has called, right? They have gone into some kind of a battle. They have gone into something, and it might not be the same. Some things might be similar. The character of the individuals might be different. What the Lord is calling you to might be different. But one of the things that we see is that God called them and God used them just who they are, and He is preparing them. And if you're trying to drag people with you, or people are trying to jump on your bandwagon, I'm here to tell you that it is more than likely that it is not necessarily meant for them to go. And so just be prayerful for the people that surround you. Go into prayer when you want somebody to go into something with you, to see if that's a person that the Lord even wants you to take along. And when they say no, that's okay too. That's okay too, because there's just some things that God wants us to just go through alone, so that we can just give Him the glory for that in the end, because trust me, you will need that when you move on to the next phase. And so with the just to wrap up that last part, the last couple of verses are just talking about the other three judges. In verse 8, it says, after Jephthah died, Isban from Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He sent his daughters to marry men outside his clan, and he brought in 30 young women from outside his clan to marry his son. Isban judged Israel for 7 years, and when he died, he was buried in Bethlehem. Elon becomes Israel's judge. After Isban died, Elon from the tribe of Zebulun judged Israel for 10 years, and when he died, he was buried at Ajalon in Zebulun. And then Abdon became a judge. After Elon died, Abdon, a son of Hillel from Pirathon, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys, and he judged Israel for 8 years. And when he died, he was buried in Pirathon in Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. So that ends chapter 12. For those of you who read ahead, we will be talking about Samson. I am looking forward to talking about Samson starting in Judges 13 for next week. I have been studying that for some time. I like to say I know where we're going, but the Lord just tends to show us something different every week. And so we'll see where He wants to take us with that. But for those of you who want to start reading about Samson, I know we tend to hear the story about Samson and Delilah, and, Samson and his hair, and, just, like the history of Samson, but it was really good to kind of deep down into the scriptures, as it relates. And it was very informative. And there were a lot of things that even I had to question and go back and read again, but it was very informative. And so I look forward to us getting into that. But I have really been enjoying reading about Israel's judges. Have any of y'all gotten anything out of learning about the judges? I mean, some of them they didn't speak about as in depth as others, but I loved getting to this place. I loved seeing how, for me in this season, and anybody can share, but for me in the season, one of my biggest takeaways from this the first couple of chapters of the book of Judges is just how important it is for us to be in that direct relationship with God, and how the people of Israel's journey to have someone else to lead and depend on just really put them in a bad position, really led them astray more often than not. And so while it's okay to be under people or alongside people, I kind of like to say, there are always going to be things that, you know, leaders in place, right? You have a boss at work, you have a president of the United States, you know, there's always going to be leaders in place, but God has to be your leader in everything and everywhere. I don't care who is in place. If you follow God, you will not go wrong. You just might go wrong with these leaders that we have in place. And so building up that relationship, I think about it even when we, you know, join churches or ministries or just different people that, you know, are doing different things, and we just feel like, and we need a leader. You know, we need somebody, but all we really need is the Lord. All we really need is the Lord. I'm going to say that again. All we really need is the Lord.
Amen.
Okay, that is it. That is all we need. And I'm telling you this because I learned the hard way. I was under one pastor for the most part for 21 years. I've been in different churches, but I always had one pastor, and it wasn't until he passed that I realized that I really didn't depend on the Lord. I depended on him. And when I didn't have him, it was just me and the Lord. And I thank God, because guess what? I'm not going to lose the Lord like I lost my pastor. I'm never going to lose the Lord in that kind of way. And so I thank God for it. And I'm telling you, it's nothing better than it. And so, and other people have come. And other people have tried, but I'm telling you, you cannot go wrong when you have the Lord. I'm just telling you. So I encourage you to be in relationship with God for yourself. Read the word for yourself. Develop a prayer life for yourself. Bring your questions. We could discuss it, but let God give you the direction where he wants to take your life. Just get in relationship with him. For those of you who know, we start 15 minutes early now, just so that if we don't do nothing else, just 15 minutes of prayer. I'm not a strong prayer, but I will pray to God. Why? Because I trust him. I trust his word. I trust that he answers prayers. It don't have to be elaborate, but I'm in good enough relationship with him that he knows me and I know him, and he knows my heart. And I want to make sure that my audio and my video matches. And so I'm letting you know now, just take that time and develop your own personal relationship with the Lord. And no matter what battles you have in front of you, no matter the people that's around you, he will not fail you. And so it is almost 7 o'clock there, 4 o'clock here. So I'm going to go ahead and end this because I am on vacation. Thank you, Jesus. And I want to enjoy as much of my vacation as possible. So
Well deserved.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm back off the grid after this. So I am going to close us